Okay, in this module, we are going to learn the basic approach to a critical reading passage. And in this module or this lesson, I've given us a relatively short passage. And you will, of course, get relatively short passages on the GRE, but for the longer passages, this technique applies as well. And the idea here is we want to read actively. And by read actively, I mean we want to get involved in the passage. We want to know what's going to happen, or want to know really what's going to happen next. What is it going to talk about, this passage? And we go from sentence to sentence, and when we read actively, we're also creating this, we're of course reading for general meaning, but we're creating this structure in our heads. So if someone came along, let's just say big one of these big dudes, just puts his hands over the screen, you can't see anything. If you're cut off like that in a passage, you could turn around and you could tell this dude blocking the screen exactly what this passage is about. You could say, oh, well, the passage begins by talking about a theory, and then etc., etc. However, and the reason why I'm even opening up with this lesson is so many students, when they read these standardized test passages, is they get very bored. Our eyes droop, and next thing you know, you've read an entire passage, but you really haven't read it. And that's the key with reading actively. You're not just stringing sentence upon sentence, word upon word, trying to get to the end. You're actually reading for a general meaning, and in the process, creating structure in your head. So those are the three important things to keep in mind. Now let's actually take a look at the passage. Okay, as I said, not too long. You'll definitely get some of these short guys on the actual GRE. So you want to read through here, and as you're reading, you're sort of creating these mini summaries in your head. So you begin with, for any new story to get told, there has to be an opening, a sudden tectonic drawing of a discipline's conventional wisdom. You go, okay, there's a challenge to the common wisdom of something. And for a new theory to kind of challenge the conventional wisdom or the current theory, there has to be a sudden shaking here of this current view. That has to be challenged. And so all of a sudden people say, wait a second, maybe the conventional view is not correct. Of course, you don't want to use so many words to do so, but that's the gist of it. Anyway, let's continue on. Thomas Kuhn described this critical moment with the now much weathered phrase paradigm shift. So when conventional wisdom here is jarred, challenged by a new story, we call this a paradigm shift. That's all that sentence does. And then it goes on, elaborates here. It's the precise moment of the tilt, when you go from one way of looking at the world to a new way, a new theory, a new story coming out of or going against this old worldview. So again, we need this old worldview to be challenged. And that's where we are now. And so he comes, basically this passage, the first part is dealing with what is a paradigm shift, what's happening, how is the new story relating to the old story. And now we have a specific example. And that's where we are now in the subdiscipline of ancient American archaeology, poised between those views held as always by the conservatives on one side. So this would be the conventional wisdom, and then the agitated revolutionaries are the ones with a new story. Hopefully they're shaking the conventional wisdom so people will start listening to their story. And so when you get to the end here, you just want to be able to summarize that in your head. Okay, it's about something called a paradigm shift, when there's a new story or new worldview challenging the old one, and the example here is in ancient American archaeology. And with that, and again, that doesn't take very long, you are more equipped, or better equipped, to answer the question. So we look here, it says, according to the passage, the author of the passage regards the current debate in ancient American archaeology to be one in which what? Okay, so we know it's one in which there's a paradigm shift happening. There is a new story challenging the old story. Okay, so a compromise is imminent. Let's look at A. Well, imminent means about to happen. A compromise is both sides agree on something. They say, okay, well, you both have a point, we both have a point. And that's definitely not what's going on here. We have this tilt, this paradigm shift between the old view and the new view. That is, the new view is challenging the old view. B, both sides have reached an impasse. This is where there is no agreement. They're sort of banging heads together. So that's not the case. Again, there's movement, there's a tilt. C, the conventional view is being challenged. And here we have an answer that very much matches up with the answer that we came up with. That is, the new view is challenging the old view. And when the old view is challenged in such a way, this is called the paradigm shift. D, archaeology will be forever changed. Notice that word forever. It's very strong. It's an extreme answer choice that we want to avoid. Archaeology may be changed, or will probably or likely change. Even that's a little bit of a stretch, but this forever, this extreme language is definitely wrong. And finally, E, the traditionalists will be proven wrong. Do we know that based on the passage? Does it say that? All we know is that the old theory, the traditionalist theory, is being challenged. We don't know if it will ultimately be proven wrong. And just like that, there we have the answer.